On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I share parts of my story and offer up the 5 suggestions that have helped me survive and thrive for the last 1,100 plus days. I share what happened as my anxiety became unmanageable. Help was just 3 words away. Those 3 words were, I need help. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I hope you are having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decorah. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios over on the east side of our great capital city, Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, the big X at Decorah 8791, as well as hitting me up at Facebook at Tim Decorah. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast. Leave me a comment if you like what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who should or would love to tell their story, email me at tdecorah@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today wherever you happen to be. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you laugh, cry, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will be released on Monday and Thursday morning, featuring a wide range of guests, including yours truly. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc., etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Today's episode is going to be featuring yours truly. And before we get that started, I do want to, those of you that can see the episode, or if you can't see this episode, I want to make our listeners aware of the merch. I just got it. It was the giving and receiving season. And thanks to my good friends up at Just a Game Impressions in Wisconsin, Dells, Wisconsin. They do a lot of printing, screen printing, embroidering, etc., etc. And they happen to put together t-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve for the podcast. I am wearing our black t-shirt today with our logo or something similar to our logo in a little light blue. Light blue is the color of my hometown, the Wisconsin Dells Chiefs. So that is part of my color scheme in addition to some black and white. But if you can see that today, I will probably have the merch up for sale, including hopefully some other pieces in the future, but stay tuned for that. Today, I wanted to get some content out there about Survive and Thrive 8791. The first 3 months of the podcast have been educational, inspirational, and for me, a heck of a lot of fun to do. I've learned so much about the guests I've had on the show. I've been entertained, and I've learned some strategies that have helped my program, my way of looking at life, my mental health, my physical health. So it's been really awesome. In addition, I've heard from you, the listeners, through your comments about how the podcast has entertained and educated you. And there's been even some aha moments with some of our listeners. Some of you have known personally some of the guests that have been on the show and didn't know some of the things that they've talked about. And now you know a little bit more. Additionally, I've had several people reach out with guest suggestions and topics that you would like to hear about. So make sure if one of the listeners wants to tell your story of how you learned to survive and thrive, reach out to me at that email I mentioned earlier. If there is somebody that you know that has in your mind been surviving and thriving and you feel like they should be on the show, send me a message with their name, contact information, and I would be happy to reach out and hopefully get them on the show. Again, it doesn't take a special person to tell your story, but I think it takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of strength to put yourself out there. But that's, I think, at least for me, and so far the guests I've had on, has been a very healing experience of putting yourself out there. If you know somebody or you want to be on the podcast, just reach out to me. Prior to December of 2021, a little over 3 years ago, I lived with a lot of worry, fear, dread, and gloom and doom that filled my entire life for most of my life. The past 1,100 plus days, 1,100 plus days, I've had almost none of those feelings: worry, fear, dread, gloom, and doom. Now, don't get me wrong. I still get the normal worry that comes with everyday life, family, basically normal stuff, more normal life things. I can give you one example. Back in June of this year, 2024, I had a job interview. And most of you know, or those of you that have experienced a job interview, those can be a little stressful. Those can cause some worry. They can cause a little fear. And that is normal. That's the normal stuff everybody gets. And I started a new job July 17th, which I accepted. And along with that new job came a lot of fear, worry. Am I going to do what's right? What do I have to do? What's the job description? And just like my anxiety in 2021, I have reached out and asked for help with this new job. And when you ask for help, and when I asked for help, a lot of people came to my assistance. But I don't have those fears that used to dominate my life like they did for most of it. My life has been filled with positive thoughts and a positive attitude for, again, almost all of those 1,100 plus days. Today, since this is the giving season, I wanted to give you 5 things that have helped me to stay essentially anxiety-free. I'll give you a couple of seconds to get out a piece of paper, maybe a notebook, a pen or pencil, and get ready to hear what has changed my life. Now, I'm going to set that up with our first segment before we get to that. So just bear with me. But if you got to get those things that you can jot some notes down, I'd love to have you do it. A life that was filled with worry, fear, dread, and doom and gloom. Before I get to that, I need to talk about our sponsor. Speaking of giving, I want to thank my sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, for their support since episode number 1. Buck and Honey's gives back to the communities that they are part of through a lot of different things that they sponsor. They host fundraisers. They have donations. They also, you purchase some food. Some of the cost of the food will go to certain clubs or organizations in the communities that they represent, which includes the home office in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. Owner Tom Anderson's Restaurants offer a great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere to anyone fortunate enough to dine in or carry out. Now, Tommy, as I've known him for years, places the mental health of his employees as a high priority. Buck and Honey's contracts with a mental health professional, so help is always a phone call away for any of his employees. Okay, segment 1. 'Tis the season for giving. Today, I'm going to give you the 5 things that have changed my life over the last 1,100 plus days. And I'm giving these suggestions to you for a small price, a very, very teeny, tiny, small price. And that small price is your time. I know time is essential during this part of the year. If you've found some time to knock out 35 to 40 minutes of an episode, you're going to get some good stuff. Your time. So get out a piece of paper, notebook, pen or pencil, or even better yet, pull out your phone and jot these down in your phone so that you won't forget them. This fits my personality very well. I've been giving my heart and soul to a profession I absolutely enjoyed for 32 years. I was a physical education teacher in 2 very awesome school districts. Hillsborough School District, which is in the southwest part of Wisconsin, and then just outside of our capital city. I was with the Wanakee Community School District for the last 29 years. I've given my time to my family and friends whenever possible. However, worry, fear, and dread, gloom and doom stuff started to take over my life. I don't know exactly when that started to happen, and it didn't all happen at once, but it was a slow process where anxiety started to creep its head in there. And I know about when it started. For me, it was probably about 1999 or 2000 because of some triggering events that I've talked about on other parts of the podcast. Eventually, I was so wrapped up in anxiety that it felt normal. It really felt normal to live that way, those anxious feelings. And when it was suggested that I get help, I was afraid. I was suffering. And for that suffering, the coping skill that I learned to use in 99 or 2000, I turned to alcohol, and I also turned to anxiety medication to help ease my pain and more or less control my anxiety. But eventually those things stopped working. I was suffering. I had a hard time letting go of my suffering out of really fear of the unknown. I preferred suffering because it was familiar to me. In the end, December 2021, all I wanted to do was isolate myself from the rest of the world and hoped that my anxiety would just go away. Well, that didn't happen. In December 2021, I took a huge leap of faith because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. With two of my coworkers on my front step, knocking on my door, ringing my doorbell, essentially performing a wellness check. I was sitting on my green recliner and I prayed for them to go away. I literally put my hands together, interlocked my fingers, and I said, please go away. Please make them go away. And for the first time in a while, my prayers were answered and they left. I heard car doors. I heard car doors open. I heard car doors slam. I heard two cars start up and they backed out. Not long after that, because of, I think it was my deep faith. I've always had a deep faith, and my higher power just answering one prayer. My higher power wasn't going to answer just one. My higher power went with a couple that day, and my higher power, who I call God, made me do what I couldn't do for myself most of my life. I uttered three words that saved my life. And those of you listeners that have listened to me talk on my podcast about my own story, I picked up my phone, I called my coworkers back, one of them answered, and I said these three words that have essentially saved my life. They picked up the phone and I said, I'm here. And the three words I said were, I need help. And they were back shortly thereafter. Segment 2 is going to get into, again, those 5 suggestions that I have, and I'll try to tie in a couple of little bits and pieces, some stories there that hopefully will make you cry, laugh, and think. Anyway, before we get to segment 2, our sponsor, Buck and Honey's, has been with us since episode number 1, and I'm darn glad for that, for their support and friendship with 4 locations in the Madison, Wisconsin area. One is always near. Some people ask, why Buck and Honey's? They have a great menu, 5-star customer service, and Tom Anderson, the owner, places a high priority on the mental health of his employees by having a mental professional on call for them. And there's nothing like going to a great restaurant to make you feel better. In segment 2, I'm going to take you through my 5 suggestions to a better life, what it's like to have coping skills to survive and thrive. Please stay tuned. Don't change that dial. You don't want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'll be back. If you, a loved one, or someone you know who is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help or resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Crisis Services, dial 911. Suicide Prevention Lifeline, call 988. To connect via web chat, go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to utter 3 words. I need help. Now back to the show. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. What is up? Segment 2, I've titled the 5 suggestions that saved my life. Here we go. If someone came up to me 10 years ago and whispered in my ear, I have 5 things that are going to save your life in 2021, I'm not sure I would have listened unless they were offering cash and prizes. But for me, since 2021, I've received something better than cash and prizes. I got my life back. And not that my life was horrible and tumultuous and anything that you can think of under the sun. It was a struggle from basically the end of the 90s to 2021. And I was surviving that whole time until I learned to survive a little bit better way than going to other coping skills that had up to 99 had worked for me and then stopped working. Here are those 5 suggestions. Get out that pen, get out that pencil, get out your phone, get ready to take some notes. Okay, suggestion number 1, get professional help or find a trusted friend that you can tell your deepest problems to. So in 2021, I was getting help at a mental health facility in Northern Illinois. Part of that was to address a couple of things. What I thought was an alcohol problem, but I also wanted for the first time to address my anxiety. So I was assigned a counselor. I was also assigned a psychiatrist, and they started to do some assessments. The first person I had talked to was a counselor, and she suggested that maybe after that first meeting where we got to know each other, she said, maybe you need to talk with our psychiatrist. Sat down with this gentleman, and it was right before the new year. We sat down, and he started to ask me some questions that I decided to answer truthfully. In the past, I would answer some of these questions in the not most truthful manner. Things like how many nights a week do you not sleep very well? For me, it was typically 5 or 6, sometimes even 7 nights a week. And I would say just a couple, 1 or 2. How often is your anxiety unmanageable? For me, it was every day, 24/7, 365 for a lot of years. I would usually answer that question with maybe a couple of days a week, but I had no idea how to cope with those things. My counselor and psychiatrist both did an evaluation, and it came back right before the first of the year 2022, came back with a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. I get anxious over just about anything. For me, it was mild to severe because of the length of time that it would last. And it wasn't lasting a day or two. It was weeks and months and as well as years. And I started seeking some counseling with the counselor that I was assigned, and I started to go back in time and try to figure out when this all had started. And as I've stated in previous podcasts, it started back when I was a youngster, and then it resurfaced back in the late 90s and early 2000s, where I was triggered by some things in everyday normal life. But my anxiety would go off the charts, and I wouldn't be able to shut it down. So I got this help in 2021 with some coping strategies. Again, since that time, I've been almost 1,100 days anxiety free. That professional help just didn't end after a month or so. To this day, I still see my counselor about once a month. That used to be twice a month. That used to be once a week early on. And just talking about some of the things that have really bothered me and caused me and triggered my anxiety. Suggestion number 1, get professional help or find a trusted person that you can tell these things to. Suggestion number 2, make amends and offer up some forgiveness. First of all, the amends. What does that mean? I had to look that up myself. According to the internet, because the internet is always right, it said making amends is to do something to correct a mistake that one has made or a bad situation that one has caused. So for me, the big amends that I had to make was in March of 2022. Matter of fact, I also did the forgiveness. My mother passed away in 1997 at the age of 46. She herself probably suffered from anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma from a young age. And in March of 2022, I had returned to her gravesite, probably one of the only 4 or 5 times I had done that. And because it was a suggestion from some people that thought that this would help my anxiety and help get rid of some of that, I made these amends at my mother's grave. And I basically said, Mom, I am sorry for the way I had acted in the last 10 years of her life. One of the things was after I graduated from high school in 1987, I went off to college, and then after college got into teaching and also got married and had kids of my own. And I was really absent from my mother's life. Probably at a time when she needed me the most, I was just not present. And the times I was present, it was either to drop my kids off, go over and visit their grandma, or see her at different celebrations, birthday parties, holiday season, and that was it. I wasn't there present as a son, and I wanted to offer up some amends to her. In hindsight, it was actually a good thing that I was not present in her life, because I was taking care of my family, my wife and my kids, and essentially being what I thought was a good father. But I also at that time needed to be a good son, and I was not. I should have spent a little more time in her life other than for those other reasons, and I just was absent. And she passed away in 1997 at 46, and I had her for 28 years, and they were 28 of the very good years. There were ups and downs and things I had to deal with, and because I've made it this far, I would say that she did a very good job despite some of the things that she did not have that I had. Forgiveness on that, as well as making amends on that day. I said, Mom, I forgive you for what I thought was you being a bad parent. I said to myself, my mom wasn't a bad parent because I'm still alive today. She did the best. And I said, Mom, you did the best with what you had, which was not very much. She did not have her mom or dad in her life growing up. She was raised by her grandmother, and my great uncle essentially raised her and my other uncle. So she didn't have a lot of coping skills or parenting skills either. So I said, I forgive you, and you did the best you could. And as soon as I made amends and offered up some forgiveness, I don't know what it was. I call it a spiritual experience. There was no trees waving. There was no sun shining. The clouds didn't split and the sun started shining on me. Something happened that day. And because it was my mom and she was at the heart and root of a lot of my issues growing up and issues as a young adult and an older adult, once I got those things off my chest, out of my head, I instantly felt better. I don't know what it was. It was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. It was like that. It was that bear hug that I had been in for over 50 years. All of a sudden fell to the ground, and I immediately felt better. I've tried to quantify or put a percentage on what happened that day and what I was able to get off my chest or out of my head. And I've said, and I've told people this, I said, I think I lost 40% of the things that gave me issues as a person growing up. And now, whenever something comes in that should bother me, that had bothered me in the past, would lead to stress, would lead to anxiety, would lead to panic. When it goes in there, into my head, it has somewhere to go. And in the past, it didn't. And that's when I would be into anxiety mode, worry, fear, dread, doom and gloom. And again, I'm essentially free of those things. Suggestion number 3 is practice how. H-O-W. What is that? Be honest in your life. The H is honest. Be honest O is open to new ways of living. That's the O. And then the W in how is willing to try new things that will help you live a better life. Any of those, I tried to be as honest. I know when I just talked about answering some questions about my anxiety and my mental and physical health, I would often not be honest about those things. Now I'm honest about everything in my life. And one of the big things about being honest is telling my story and putting myself out there. Be open to new ways of living. The old ways of living were essentially what got me to seek mental and physical health from professionals. I had to open myself up and be willing to take some of these suggestions and try them. The 5 suggestions that I'm giving you today may not work for you, but they work for me. If 3 of them work, use those 3, get rid of the other 2, and find 2 other things that are going to help you and your anxiety, depression, mental health, physical health. You can apply just about all of these suggestions to anything in your life. And then the W, willing or willingness to try new things. So I try new things. If they work for me, I continue to use them. I'm always willing and looking for other people's suggestions as well. I'm a lifelong learner. So this HOW method, honest, open, and willing, has really helped me grow as a person, has helped me grow as a husband, has helped me grow as a father, and it's going to help me grow as a grandfather now in all of the things I do. Suggestion number 4 is practice these principles in all your affairs, in all aspects of your life. So a lot of these things I mentioned so far, I can apply those to my job, which is a brand new job. I can apply those to any situation that presents itself. And usually these 5 suggestions are going to help me. Now, there might be different suggestions that I have to pull from, different coping strategies that I pull from that I can apply to different events. But that's the good part about being a lifelong learner, open and willing to try new things for different situations that come up. So practice these principles in all your affairs or in all parts of your life. Suggestion number 5 is to be authentic and real. This podcast, when you hear me talk, I am being authentic and real. When people ask me about my anxiety, I'm open about it. I have not had to turn to alcohol. I have not had to turn to anxiety medication. And I have applied all of these principles to all my affairs. In addition, with the podcast, I'm telling you everything. I'm not making anything up. I'm being real and I'm being authentic. If there's something that you want to talk about, if there's something that you have questions about, I'm open to any questions. You reach out to me, email address, Facebook, social media accounts. Reach out to me if you have questions from me on how I did things. I'm an open book when it comes to all of that stuff. Call to action. I want to review these 5 things, these 5 suggestions that I just talked about today. Suggestion 1, get professional help or find a trusted person. Suggestion number 2, make amends and forgiveness. And for me, making amends and offering up forgiveness or forgiving somebody or something is an ongoing process. I still continue to do those things to this day, and I'm sure I will be doing them until the last day that I'm here on good old planet Earth. Suggestion number 3, practice how. Honest, open, and willing. Doesn't matter what it happens to be. You can apply that to anything. I had to apply that to a new job. If I decide to switch careers and try something else, I have to be honest, open, and willing. Just like this podcast, I had to be honest, open, and willing to try new things to make this podcast go. Practice these principles in all your affairs. So whatever it is you happen to be doing, these 5 suggestions can help you out for any life situation that might come your way. And then suggestion number 5, be authentic and real. Don't hide things. Be truthful. Be honest. And I guarantee you will probably find a better way of life. So I'm glad this is a little bit shorter episode than it normally would be, but I wanted to get some content out there today. On our next episode, we will have another amazing guest who will share how they survived and thrived. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecorah@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through. And with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can learn to survive and thrive. Until next time, take care